Hello, is that you?
There, I think I got it.
I'm going on mute now, guys.
Yeah.
Well.
Yeah. Hey,
Well.
Rich, are you still here?
I am here
Why are you here? Why are you here for this interview, Rich?
to try and provide some balance.
There you go. Balance. Because we got Uncle Dave, and now we got balance because we got me, and somebody has to referee.
That's an important point.
That is an excellent point. And but Rich, what you should know is this is not an Uncle Dave's fireside chat. Which, by the way, Dave, I have a question for you, and I hope I get a good answer. But if I don't, I fully understand.
Okay.
I had this thought the other day, and I wanted to talk to David Hyde about some of the stuff on his Facebook page.
Okay.
Our buddy in Dallas, Texas.
Yeah, he's a really neat guy.
Yeah, you met him. Yeah.
Yep. He's actually visited the OC, and really, really neat guy. Nice daughter. Fascinating career in music, and I love his MKT layout. I have to admit, I'm a little obsessed with it. I wish I was going to Texas with you guys.
I'm not going. I'll be walking from Toronto to Barrie.
I understand. Yep. And you guys being the proverbial AML.
Yeah.
There's going to be a bunch of people down there for that, and I really wish I could join, primarily to see that particular layout along with a few others.
Well, I've heard from the grapevine that David's layout is pretty impressive.
Me too. And someday, Mr. Hyde, I'm gonna surprise you.
We'll go. You know what we should do? We should go together.
That would be fun.
We should take Rich.
That would be even more fun.
Yeah.
Oh.
Mr. Party.
Yeah, well, I at least like to think of myself as a bit of a traveler.
Yeah, and you can bring the sandwiches. You can bring the sandwiches. And that sandwich you gave me this year at Crescent, we even beat the one you got me last year at Crescent.
You think so, huh?
Oh, yeah. It was awesome. I couldn't believe it when I wanted to help carry stuff up, and you insisted that you would carry everything up, and I just tagged along behind you. And then I got up to the top, and there was a spectacular sandwich and a couple of cans of cider or hard cider. Man, it was great.
And I'm glad you had a good time. We tried it. We aimed to please.
What were we going to do? Oh, yeah. So anyways, I wanted to ask David Hyde some questions of some stuff he'd posted on his Facebook page. And I thought to myself, I should just have a conversation with him, just him and me. And I said, be like the fireside chats that I have with Uncle Dave. And then I thought to myself, well, why don't I just have fireside chats with other people that I want to talk to that can be put on the Patreon channel? And I thought, well, I could put that on the cover photo as it's a fireside chat with David Hyde. But then I thought, well, I hope Uncle Dave won't be thinking that things are changing. So I think the key here is it's going to be Uncle Dave's fireside chats. But then I might have it just say fireside chat with David Hyde. What do you think of that?
That's fine. Well, First of all, I think it's your show, and you get to decide what things are called. I do think, especially because David Hyde and David Abelise share the same first name, that particular one would be more confusing. But I think, Uncle Dave's fireside chats versus
just a fireside chat
with
with.
Yep. And I'm happy to co-host a fireside chat if that would be.
Oh, really? Okay. Well, that'd be fun.
It's up to you.
Well, that would be fun. But you're always doing something.
Yeah. It's a busy time of life with young kids, full-time work, and hobby fun. And all the things that go with all three of those things. But we can make time for good stuff.
We managed to organize tonight's interview. So this and Rich, this particular interview, this is on the free channel on Monday. It's one of the episodes.
Okay.
And the next fireside chat, my understanding, is going to be on the free channel too.
That's right. By special request. We had a special request from somebody to put the next fireside chat on the free channel to give all the folks to get a taste of what that is like. And maybe if we do more fireside chats with other people, we can put more of the Uncle Dave ones on the free channel.
Yeah, sounds good to me. I'm happy to be part of it as always. This is a deep dive podcast. It's certainly my favorite in the industry. And I think it captures a wonderful cross section of what this hobby is these days.
And you say it's your favorite in the industry. Are there other podcasts?
Not that I'm really aware of.
Oh, okay.
That's what I mean. It's my favorite. It's the only.
So, Rich.
Yes, Lionel.
This particular podcast is on the free channel. And one of the things we like about these podcasts is that they're brought to you by Rapido Trains.
Your fast track for model railroading fun.
Rapido Trains, your fast track to model railroading fun.
That's pretty darn good.
That was impressive.
Right there. Yes.
Holy mackerel. Sweet. Nice one. I really didn't expect that, Rich. You listen to all the podcasts, though. Have you ever missed one?
I don't believe so.
I don't think so. And are you still working on that catalog?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't done a lot of work on it lately because I was doing travel prep and things like that. But it's, it's. I was looking at it the other day, actually, saying I got to get back on this.
And that reminds me, I've got to get you at least on a AML variety show, All-Star Variety Show, to at least for half an hour or something, talk about your latest trip to the Cumbers and Toltec.
Well, that'd be great. Yeah, it was really interesting to listen to the episodes that you've had recently talking about Colorado while I was traveling around Colorado.
Yeah.
It was pretty interesting timing.
It would be. Yeah,
and I know Bernard was saying that he hadn't really gotten into the narrow gauge stuff yet, but we'll hook him. We'll get him.
Yeah, we'll get him. And we're not going to talk much more because we got to get our guest on here. We had some financial business for the network to take care of. We had a meeting with all you guys before to deal with some financial business. Sometimes the banks don't seem to understand the way I work with them.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes banks don't understand much of anything.
Exactly.
Besides their own bottom line.
Yeah. So this podcast is brought to you by Rapido Trains.
Your fast track for model railroading fun.
If it's N, if it's H-O, the fast track is Rapido.
And now we're going to talk to a young fellow named John McGuire, who Uncle Dave met through Ralph Heiss.
That's correct.
I feel like Ralph should have a nickname. We got to get Ralph on this podcast. That's what we got to do. Is get Ralph on this podcast. He's been on once from a couple of interviews at Springfield and at the, what is it called? The Station Inn.
Station Inn, yep.
Yeah, so we got to get him on here too. So anyways, we're going to talk to this young fella, John McGuire, who you met through Ralph Heiss, and we're going to leave the story there and bring him in and talk to him. So, Rich, can you go down the hallway and get him out of the green room?
I absolutely can. Just give me a minute, okay? Because I walk slow.
Yeah, I know.
As Dave knows.
Yeah, it's slower.
Hello, John. John, you there?
I'm here.
Oh, okay. Are you done with the shrimp?
Yes, I am. It was great.
Okay. All right. Come on down. It's time to bring you on.
All right.
Are you sitting upright?
I actually am. You have a really good guess right there.
So, John, how old are you?
I am 22, going on 23, actually. Pretty young.
Yeah, I know. So that's part of the fun that's going to be exciting to talk to you because Dave, so help fill in the blanks here. You met John through Ralph Heiss because you wanted to somehow add lights to your locomotives or something?
Yeah, that's the skeleton of the story right there. Ralph and Rich too are both, inner circle, people on the Onondaga Cutoff that have really changed the way the railroad operates. They brought a lot of loyalty and fastidiousness to different parts of the operation and the preparation. And so the whole sessions are much improved with both Rich and Ralph, both of whom have far more operating experience, not just here in New Jersey, but everywhere around the country, with a lot of the older school high-end operations, the Tony Custers and the Perry Squires and the Harold Worthwines. And then, with various meets that have come through New Jersey, both of them have been involved longer than I have. And they're guys, in both cases, they're people I should have known much better, much earlier, which is a whole separate, that'd be a good fireside chat discussion, actually. But so Ralph and I were talking, and I said, we were talking about the night operations, which is a standard facet of operations on the Onondaga Cutoff. We run a 24-hour fast clock that runs on a 3-to-1 ratio. And so part of probably 9 out of 10 sessions is dark. Occasionally you get a totally dark session, and occasionally you get a session where it's almost all just in the daylight. But for the most part, night operations is, roughly half of what we do. And the one thing I was really lamenting in the last couple of years was how, because a night session on the OC is dark. The lights are off, and the layout lighting, some safety lighting around the floor, and the occasional flashlight is, in the light of the computer screens from the dispatcher's console are pretty much the ambient light in the room. So it's dark. And one of the things that growing up watching trains, of course, back in my teenage years and my 20s, I spent a lot of time watching trains at night. I think a lot of us in that age bracket did that as well. And digital photography has made that far easier to document. But back when I was young and doing those kinds of overnight trips and what have you, one of the most iconic things is the look of a locomotive moving at night with all of its auxiliary lights, not just the headlight and the number boards, but beacons and markers and ground lights and step lights and walkway lights and so on and so forth. And I was talking to Ralph and I said, man, I've done a couple of these, and we were looking at a model on the workbench, and it was all pulled apart, and my wiring is it's the wiring that a civil engineer does, so to speak. And so, I was hacking my way through them, and they came out okay, but it took me, weeks to do one, and it was ham-fisted. The quality of the work wasn't up to something that was going to last long term on the OC through operations. And Ralph's like, a buddy of mine, I forget how Ralph said he met you, John, but I guess you guys had communicated online.
Yes.
With mutual, probably through Scott Lupia.
It was actually through Scott. Yeah.
Fair enough. Okay. And Scott, who's an unbelievable detailer of locomotives and has his own KV Models company. I mean, exquisite top grade etched brass parts. Of which I've made quite a bit of use actually myself. Ralph and Scott have known each other for many years, not only through trains but also through the heavy metal circuits, because they're both heavy metal fans. And Ralph said, "Oh well, Scott's got this buddy, and he's reasonably priced. He's just getting started. You should give him a try." And I thought to myself, "All right, what do I have to lose?" So I reached out to John, and he was out at college, and I brought a box of locomotives up to him, and we met at I guess it was a Quick Check.
It was a right? Wawa. We were essentially at a truck stop on the side of I-80.
Yeah, we in that, we talk about creepy train guy, Lionel.
Yeah.
Like creepy train guy drives up to a truck stop on Route 80 with a box of locomotives.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
Not so good. I'd never even met John.
Yeah, and you're stumping me at the box part. I would have thought, well, here's one. Let's see how this guy can do with one of these.
Oh, it was a box of 15.
Yeah, John said, well, we could do one for this price, or we could do 15, and we'll combine them, and it was a little bit cheaper. And I thought to myself, not for nothing, it's a good price, and I've got one or two engines from Athearn and Rapido that have these auxiliary lights. The modern productions have more auxiliary lighting. And that's the thing is, you watch a train go by at night on the OC, and a modern, Rapido B36-7 has marker lights, and a modern Athearn SD60M has step lights. A modern Aurora SD60F, their CN SD60F, has everything. It's got ground lights, truck lights, marker. It's gorgeous, and they stand out at night. It's like, what's wrong with the rest of the fleet? So I said, what the heck? Roll the dice. Give this guy a chance. He comes highly recommended from top shelf modelers, and let me tell you, it kind of blew me away.
So did you have any other recommendations other than Ralph and Scott, or it was just those two guys and you said, damn the torpedoes, here's a box of locomotives?
That's a Roger. That's a big Conrail Roger, as they say.
You're braver than I would have been.
Well, Lionel, you got to know when to trust experts. And Scott Lupia is truly an expert at locomotive detailing.
That's fair enough.
If Scott trusts somebody, with his locomotives to talk to about electronics and what have you. And we'll hear from John shortly here, but I'm pretty sure that Scott had a big hand in getting the energy for Garden State Modelworks started with John.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
We might listen to John, but I believe, Rich, we're all out of time, aren't we?
Is it that time already?
Must be an Uncle Dave night. Yeah.
So, okay.
I'm telling you guys, I'm quiet. I don't talk much.
So, okay, John. So how did you get started in this installing lights? How many customers had you had before Uncle Dave showed up?
So I know we can start from the beginning here. Realistically, I've been modeling, late 90s Conrail, probably, 97 to 99, 96 to 99, a little bit later than Dave does. So everything needs ditch lights, marker lights, and kind of going that whole 9 yards, right? And fortunately, in my aspect of things, you can't just buy for example, a standard cab SD60 off the shelf with ditch lights, right? So I kind of started doing this all by necessity to really capture the scene that I was looking to do. And
so how many years ago was this that you started doing it?
I started doing this in, I want to say the beginning of 2021.
So like a couple of years ago, Matt.
Yeah, so about 2.5 years ago now.
Okay.
So realistically, before Dave, I want to say I probably had maybe 10 to 12 regular customers.
Right.
So with each of those people, it's probably 5 or 6 engines a piece. So you're looking at maybe 40 to 60 engines or so that I've done before I, got that big box of 15 off of the side of Route 80 from Dave.
Yeah.
But it really all started from what I wanted to see in my own models. And, before that, I was always very scared to, start ripping stuff apart and, afraid to put it all back together. But Scott Lupio was really the one that kind of, lit the fire under my rear end. He's like, hey, you know what? You can do it. And you know what? I'm ever so thankful because here we are now.
So this to me looks like it's incredibly hard to do. like Dave said, he, ham-fisted, and that would have been me too, because I was never that interested in, wiring locomotives and stuff like that. And I mean, it looks like it's difficult to do. You could say to me $300 a locomotive, and I'd be going, yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's definitely an acquired taste, is what I'll say. Just like everybody else, they have their own specialty. Like I am nowhere near a kit basher, as Dave's really good, with his weathering and his an entire layout. If we're being honest here, it just happens to be my niche is electronics. And
is that what you do for a living? Is something like that?
Yes. So I actually just graduated from the Pennsylvania College of Technology with a degree in automation engineering.
Wow.
So this is kind of a good little, it's definitely a good side hobby to have as far as the electronics, the mechanical side of things. So I'm definitely not a stranger to small electronics. We'll leave it at that.
And how is it? How do you feel like? So you've probably been model railroader since you were like 5 or something.
Yes, since I was a very small kid.
So when do you think you started to realize the possibilities were there to add these sorts of auxiliary lights to HO scale locomotives?
So honestly, probably 2.5 years ago. So, a lot of guys, like myself, I was, a modeler since I was a kid. And then, I took a break through high school and only recently really kind of took the deep dive like I am now. And right around the time was when ESU Lokesound 5 came out. And one of my really good friends, Frank Passero, he's actually over at ESU now. He got me hooked on installing decoders, and I started, putting in ditch lights and stuff. And I'm like, wait a minute, I could do a lot more than most people even understand with these things. And that's when I really took the dive off the deep end and saw, all right, how many lights can I really cram in this thing? And that's where we are now.
So where do you think was the jumping off point when somebody else realized what you were capable of doing? Like, which locomotive it was that you did, and then somebody else saw it, and then the word started to pass around. Like, look what John's doing with locomotives.
So I think it was 2. I think it was the LMS 700, which was an Atlas C40-8W. I started drilling holes in that thing. I did walkway lights, which are like little circular lights, like right above or right below the door on the nose. I did the LER, obviously had ditch lights on it, along with as well as the marker lights. And I think Dave, I remember you texted me about that, like, wow, this is really cool. and this is really before I did anything, to the commercial level that I am now. But it was either that or it was a Athearn Genesis GP38-2 that I did for one of my original customers with the Southern style high mounted walkway lights.
So do you remember texting him, Dave, about?
Oh man, well it was, when Ralph mentioned this guy, John, my buddy John, I figured Ralph had known him longer, but Ralph has known Scott for years, and one of the things that social media does is it throws a bunch of jet fuel on the campfire of these acquaintances. You quickly can find experts in almost any field, and so Ralph, I think, got a copy of that picture from Scott, and texted it to me, and here I am looking at it, an Atlas C40-8W, which is a nice model. It's certainly late 90s, early 2000s tooling. It was top shelf in that point, and 20 years since, it's still the same tooling. It's still a nice model, but it doesn't have the fine detail of some of the more modern stuff, the modern scale trains -8s or Rapido stuff that's super current, modern Athearn Genesis. And one of the things that's lacking is auxiliary lighting. So the Atlas model comes out and has ditch lights. It's got number boards that turn on with the headlight, which was standard for 2000 era models. But today, everybody separated those. All the OEM stuff now in the high end models is separate. And John had taken this C48W, and I've got 703. He had 700, and my 703, it looks like a toy compared to what John's done. And it's the same grab irons, it's the same ditch lights, it's the same handrails. My weathering is 20 more years experience than John has, or 25 years, whatever. But the bottom line is what set, because the lights are off in these pictures. The marker lights and the step lights are just, the engine's 3-dimensional at night. It's just like I remember talking about when I was a kid. Like, you'd go trackside and sit at Dover. Dover, New Jersey was a commuter hub, and we had a family friend that lived on one of the side streets there, and we walked down to the station. This is, late 1980s. And there was always a pair of Conrail units that sat in Dover overnight. That was the local power that ran during the day on the NJ Transit lines to the east and west. And they'd sit there, and the headlight would be off, but the number boards would be lit. The engines would be started on the chillier nights, and all the lights would be on: walkway, step, ground. And it was a 3-dimensional thing at night. And sure enough, John's picture that came to me through Ralph, I was like, holy moly, that is exactly what I'm trying to capture at night on the OC. Like, and it's an LMS locomotive, Locomotive Management Services, which was a Conrail subsidiary. So it's painted Conrail blue. Those were brand new in 1994 in my era, which is why I have one of them. And I said, I got to figure out how to make this happen. I got to take a chance here, because this guy's doing it's going to take me 15 years to get my engines looking like this at this rate. I mean, the layout's not even done yet. I'm like, you don't know where to put your energy. So it was super exciting to see someone else doing this at that level.
Yeah. And okay, Rich, this is where you come in, buddy.
Okay, I'm ready.
All right. So I've had the opportunity to experience the OC at night. And to be completely honest, I enjoy it more during the day, but that's okay. That's just me. And but it is cool at night. I don't know why. You know what it was? I remember this. I didn't have much of a chance to operate it in daylight hours. The 2 times I've been there has been mostly nighttime hours. And I was like, I'd like to see this in daylight as well. So I think that's where I'm at. I need to come and make sure I get to operate it during the daylight hours.
I also don't think you saw all the step lights there, Lionel.
No.
It's different. It's different now. I got to say, it is different with all these step lights. The engines have 3 dimensions.
Is your name Rich? We're not talking to you right now.
I know. That's why I'm talking.
So, Rich, you've been there. How many years have you been at the OC?
Wow. I would say more than 10.
Okay. So you're, and your main job is to make you're the train master, aren't you, basically?
Usually. That's the role I play.
Yeah. So, you've seen it all on the OC pretty much. So what kind of a difference did you notice any difference when these locomotives started to show up?
Absolutely. For me personally, having spent a long time, I've been a rail enthusiast for more than 40 years, and some of those formative trips for me were visiting the Altoona Crescent area way back in the 80s. And you made that much of an investment in a trip to drive 4 or 5 hours away. You didn't just railfan when it was light out. We would grab some dinner and hang out at the Altoona station and watch the freights go by or wherever we were. And so the experience to me of railroading at night is something that it really resonates with me because of that background and continuing to just observe the railroad scene, sort of 24/7. So these little nuanced details that we're describing here, taken down to the model level, really help tie that all together. So yeah, it definitely is noticeable for me because it's something I experienced.
So how many of these locomotives are done now, Dave? Dave? Did Dave leave?
Oh, did we lose him?
Yeah, Dave lost. Dave left. He got mad because I wanted to talk to Rich. That's crazy talk.
Yeah, I didn't know there was a Dave on this podcast. I don't know.
Uncle Dave?
No, I was on mute. I pulled a Bruce. I was pontificating, and then you guys interrupted me. And I said, again? But I think, John, you've probably done 3 orders of 10 now.
Three orders of 10.
I want to say, Dave, I did a mental count. Well, I did a mental count and I checked my books the other day. I think we're at 34.
Yeah, there we go. That's about right. Including the couple that we have to, there's a couple little other things we're going to patch up as we go forward.
Yes.
But that said, I mean, it's because what I wanted to do, like, I don't need every engine on the railroad to have this light package, but I do want every consist to have 1 or 2.
Well, now, wouldn't that look goofy, though, if you had a consist of 3 locomotives and one of them had all the lights and the other 2 didn't?
Well, the 90s are an interesting era, and I think John will agree.
Oh, absolutely.
That, ditch lights were being added left and right to locomotives in 1993, 1994, 1995, but the mandate wasn't until 1997, if I'm not mistaken.
That sounds about right. So
many crews, even if there were ditch lights, didn't use them.
They know where the switch was.
Right. It just wasn't part of the rule book. And so it didn't get followed, Also, Conrail, when their stuff was sitting around, they used a lot of the red marker lights, but that was more, and I never figured out why, but that was far more common on GE locomotives than EMDs. And so it was more patchwork. And the other thing, and I'd learned this from David McGill, a really fascinating guy who was a Conrail engineer. He's a year or 2 older than me, lives up in Selkirk, New York, and currently works for Amtrak on the Hudson River line between New York and Albany, Rensselaer. He's been to the OC a bunch of times, and it brings back a lot of memories for him. And he's been a very good resource for me doing some research on this lighting. And so John and I have been back and forth about some of these details. But a lot of the GEs didn't have some of the auxiliary lighting that's common today. So you go out there today and watch, 2 or 3 -9s or ACs go by, and all their lights are pretty much on all the time. Back in the 90s, they were only turned on when the crews wanted them turned on.
Correct.
So trailing units and a consist would often have them off. Sometimes all the units besides the first one would have them off. And Dave McGill was funny. He's like, yeah, we used to call it stealth mode on the Boston and Albany. You turn all the lights off, just run by headlight alone. And stealth mode. And it was like, I could hear him saying that. And those guys had a lot of fun back then. So the 90s were different. They wasn't as much auxiliary lighting on all the time as you would see today. So I don't need it on in every consist all the time.
So, Rich, did you notice as you came down, as time went along, that like, hey, there's more in locomotives with these lights? It's like it must have started kind of. How many locomotives are on the railroad, Rich, during an operating session?
I would say in road service, let's call it, there's probably between 30 and 40 in a typical session.
So did you start noticing, is this number of locomotives increased with all these auxiliary lights? Did you kind of start going, holy smokes, like, look at this?
Well, this is also new, Lionel, right? I mean, there haven't been really any significant
That's right, too.
operating sessions in the last couple of months. There's been one or two, guest visit type things. So it's still rolling out. And I think for, the regulars like myself, it will become more apparent as hopefully, Dave, in the fall, you get back into more of a regular schedule.
Yeah, you've opened up a bit of a sore spot there, Rich. I'm driving home from Florida in early May 8th, 6th, 7th, 8th, somewhere in there, I forget. And I'm thinking to myself, I don't care if Dave's having an operating session this weekend coming up. I'm going to it. And maybe, hopefully, instead of it being this weekend, it'll be the next weekend, and it'll be easier for me to go. Certainly, I'm going to hit whatever one is going on in May. So I get home, and I text him. I'm like, when's the next operating session? I don't know. Well, like in May, when's the next operating session? Oh, well, there isn't one. Okay, well, when is it in June? Now, because I had one thing I had to do in June, and I'm thinking, please don't let it be on that weekend. So when is it in June? No, there isn't one. All right, well, what's going on in July? There's an operating session in July? No. I'm like, holy moly. I'm like, come on, buddy, you're killing me here. I want to go to an operating session. And there was like a 5-month gap from one operating session to the next.
It's been long. It's been a tough stretch with, my brother ran the Boston Marathon, which we talked about a while back. So that was a weekend. We had two separate family visits in town, 2 separate family visits out of town. There was a wedding. There's been some work stuff. And
how old's your brother? How old's your brother?
He is 44.
Yeah, I think he could run the Boston Marathon by himself. I don't think you need to go.
Yeah, but my dad would have been there, Lionel, and I'm all Ben's got when it comes to immediate family, and so I'm going.
And your dad would have been happy to help Ben out financially if need be. And are you doing that?
Don't need to. He's gainfully employed. Not like your banker, who's not going to be gainfully employed for much longer. I don't think.
So, Rich, has there been an operating?
Hey, believe me, I miss you, and I miss the operating sessions. I really do. It's a big hole.
Yeah, I was priming myself that if I got home on the Wednesday and there was an operating session that weekend, I was going. Like, I didn't care that I just drove from Florida. I was turning that puppy around and heading back to New Jersey. So, Rich, has there been any operating sessions with these locomotives?
I think there was one sort of demo activity in May. Dave, I don't remember when that was, right?
That was for who was here?
Rodney?
That's right. Yeah, Rodney Kantorski from Buffalo was in town. I think it was the first weekend in May. And he texted me or emailed me and said, hey, I talked to you. I know your buddy Nick Anshant really well. I'd love to come and see the Onondaga cutoff. If it's convenient, let me know. And it worked out fine. That was the weekend I was actually home with not much to do. It was the only weekend in May that it was open. So he and a couple of his friends from Buffalo came down. And these guys were all guys that worked for Conrail. They'd all run under actual searchlights. And so they loved running a couple trains around the railroad. And that was when I had, what do you think, John? That was probably the first batch, or was the first and second, I guess, were here by then.
That would have been the first and second, because I do remember you showcasing the one of the 3300 GP40-2s I did.
Yes. And so Rodney loved it and had a great time. Very nice, very courteous thank you note. And they were a big hit for the guys that actually worked on the trains, which was a lot of fun. But it's been that long since, and that was the first session in 3 months at that point. That wasn't really even a session. It was kind of a run through and have the guys run some trains and have the dispatcher sitting here. But it's been a long time since we've done a regular operating session with all the stuff that's gone on down here.
So, Rich, how are you going to decide with sporadic, or is it going to be, like you say, there's going to be like 30 locomotives? So is pretty much every train going to have 2 or 3 of these locomotives on the head end? Rich?
Jack will be the one who puts together all the consists.
Okay, but don't you sit right beside him? You and Jack are operate. I've been there. The two of you, one doesn't go to the washroom without getting permission from the other.
No, we work together, but I'll say Jack is the brains behind it, and I am more the implementer.
Yeah, Jack will build consists weeks before the session. Like it's really before setup night. That's already all set.
So what's the plan then? Like, how are we going to determine which consists get?
Well, I'll just say that like in the past, not every one of Dave's locomotives fleet in the fleet has a sound system. Right, there are some locomotives that do not have sound. Jack knows that, and so when he builds a consist, he makes sure that the soundless locomotive is the middle one, right, the buried locomotive. And I think it will be much the same way here. Like he'll, be aware of which locomotives have the extra lighting, and we'll do our best to make sure that they are at the ends of a consist, so that when it does lead, you'll see that.
So, are we assuming that? Are we assuming then that a consist of 3 will have 1 or 2 of these locomotives with all the auxiliary lights? Is that a fair statement?
That's a fair statement.
Okay. John, do you notice we're not really talking to you very much?
Yeah, well, you know what? When Dave said let experts be experts, I definitely took note of that.
So then we haven't even mentioned your company, the name of it. It's called Garden State Modelworks. I'm getting there. Settle down. I'm older than you. I'm like 3 times older than you. I'm getting there. You're lucky I still remember your name is John. Okay, so Garden State Modelworks. When did it start?
That was incorporated on December 28th, 2022. So we're looking at maybe 8 months now.
8 months.
Yeah.
Wow. And it says on your Facebook post that innovation and excellence in DCC since 2021. So you started doing it in 2021, but you actually started the company LLC in December of 22. So basically, like you said, 8 months ago.
Correct. Yeah.
And now, are you doing is this all word of mouth?
So typically, yeah. I mean, granted, I really like to post in a lot of groups. I do work with another really awesome weathering guy. His name he does a lot more than that, detailing as well. Matt Sharp from Upstate Custom Models. He does some great stuff, but he sends the word out. The Facebook really it's free marketing, if we're being honest here, and definitely word of mouth. Dave's been instrumental. Scott at KV Models has been extremely instrumental as well.
So since you started, what has kind of surprised you about the whole process?
Personally, how much attention it's gotten, if I'm being honest with you. When I first started doing this stuff, I really did not think it was going to get off the ground as much as it did. And I'm pleasantly surprised that it has. And I think that's definitely the biggest thing. I never thought in a million years I'd be sitting here talking with you, if I'm being honest. So,
well, there you go. I never thought I'd be sitting here talking to Rich. So there you go.
It's definitely an awesome experience, and I'm very excited to see. Listen, I'm only 8 months into it. What's 2 years going to hold?
Well, exactly, and the thing of it is, people all over the world are going to hear this podcast. So, I mean, we're going to have to get you back on to find out what kind of impact that had because I'm sure people are going to hear this and start going. They're going to look at Garden State Modelworks on Facebook. Do you have any kind of a website?
Really just Facebook and Instagram right now. Some people are pushing me to go put a website together, and I'm assuming as soon as I'm done with this podcast, and I'm going to have to go look into that. It's definitely something on the radar, though.
Yeah. And so how much does it cost to do a locomotive?
So typically, it's $120 plus $10 in auxiliary LED. So that's a ditch light, a step light, marker light, etc. So a pair of ditch lights, that's $20. So you're looking at, as far as the labor goes, $140. And I do give the option to the customers to provide their own speaker and decoder and stuff like that. If not, you have to go through me to purchase those.
So you do speakers and decoders as well. It's not just lights. So Dave,
it's everything.
So Dave found you for the lights, but it turns out now, Dave, did you get any of your decoders replaced?
Yes. One of the challenges for lighting, I learned from John, is that older decoders don't have the number of lighting channels, which I was vaguely familiar with, but more importantly, they don't have the electrical output, the amps, the power to handle more than a handful of LED lights. So if you're going to run, a step light to each step well, 2 walkway lights and 2 marker lights, you're going to exceed the capacity of a Tsunami 1. And you're going to have to think about upgrading that either to a Tsunami 2 or to an ESU decoder. So there were a handful that John did the whole 9 yards on, especially when I saw the quality of the work and the excitement that it brought for me back into just turning the layout on. I mean, all of a sudden, all my slides from the 90s were coming into my mind because the marker lights are lit, and it's like it took what I was excited about the OC as a time machine, as we've talked about for years now. It really captures the atmosphere of Conrail in the 90s when the lights are on, but at night it was missing something, and John has filled it for what for me is a very important gap. And once I saw that, I said, boy, like I need to do a handful more of these, like before he gets really busy.
So I got a good question, I think. Rich, you can rate this question and tell me later what you thought of it. And Rich, move your microphone just up a teeny bit more or out a little teeny bit more, because we're almost there, buddy. And do you have your Sharpie handy?
I do.
Okay, because as soon as we get that spot, you got to mark it on your face.
Will do.
What are you laughing at, John?
I just thought that was pretty
we take our podcasting pretty seriously here at the old AML network. So if somebody needs to walk around with their face marked up with a Sharpie to get the microphone placed, it's a no-brainer. You gotta do what you gotta do. Oh yeah. So Dave, sorry John, but I got another question for Dave.
Hey, you're all good.
Have you noticed, since some of these locomotives have been running around the layout, have you noticed some, for lack of a better word, deficiencies in the layout that you feel like, geez, now I got to fix that, or now it doesn't look as good because the locomotive looks so good?
There's definitely the previously existing need for more finished structures, and the town of Fayetteville, for example, definitely it continues to be apparent to my eye. But the nice part about these locomotives is, that people's eyes are on the trains. It's the layout. So the most important gap at night was definitely the 3-dimensional quality, not just a little pinpole headlight and maybe some number boards or markers, but having engines that have the step lights and the lights up top on a Conrail locomotive, because the headlights are always up high. It really gives it that depth. And at night, it goes from a 2-dimensional line moving through the darkness to a 3-dimensional changing diagram as this headlight, but then also the chassis lights, the running lights come towards you. It really makes a big difference. It's neat.
Yeah, and like, have you noticed any places where you're kind of like going, the ballast isn't as good as I want, or something like that? Because, I mean, now it's much more spectacular at night.
Right, but the nice part is all of my scenery problems go away at night anyway.
That's true.
So they're less noticeable anyway.
Well, what about during the day? Like, the lights are on during the day, I'm assuming.
Well, and that's one thing I've had to change, actually, is my briefing for the crews, because these lights, I do have them on as a default for most of the decoders. Crews can turn them off when they're not using them. I mean, normally the rules would require these lights when you're working with the train, not when you're necessarily running. So in the 90s, they weren't on a lot for every locomotive, like we talked about. So I want to let the crews know that, just like you would on the prototype, when you pick your train up, you should walk the consist and make a decision if you want to have these lights on or off, and you can turn them on or off as you see fit. I do think most crews will leave them on, especially at night, because it's visually much more impressive, and there's certainly a prototype basis for that. But the scenery itself, that's a work in progress. It's a layered process, like good weathering is, and so the scenery, not as much. The track work, I'm satisfied with. The biggest thing about adding auxiliary lighting to locomotives that jumps out at me is something that I need to keep pushing to do on the OC, is lighting structures and street lights, things like that. Ambient light around the layout.
Oh yeah, okay, I can see that. It's just, that would be the point. Then you're starting to realize that because the locomotives look so spectacular with their proper lights, you need more things that have lights to accentuate
Right. One of the things that crossed my mind about a month ago, I haven't talked to any of you guys, really to anybody about this. When you go out and watch trains at night someplace and there's a distant hillside, there's little pinpricks of light on that hillside. When you go out and watch trains in a city, there's a house on the backdrop that has lights on. So one of the things I've been sort of thinking about is if there's a way, that wouldn't take many, it wouldn't take many. And I do have my Syracuse city scene that I did years ago is actually built like this. It has lights behind it. And and you can see the glow of Toronto and the city of Syracuse at night because of the direction you're looking. So that I built with the light in the backdrop, but the rest of the layout could use that too.
Go Leafs.
So fun future projects to think about.
Yeah, I like the Toronto. I like the Toronto mention. Go Leafs, go.
Yeah, go Leafs.
But
Okay.
if I could jump in though, Lionel, this just came up in the recent podcast that you released with the Colorado visit,
Right.
from Marcus and Seth Gardner and
Bernard.
Bernard, right? Yeah, where they were talking about going to John Parker's layout and how John Parker had, I think, buildings that were lit inside that, they came on as the layout lights dim, things like that. Those are sort of that next step thing that I think Dave is talking about.
Yeah. And John?
Yep.
Any chance you would ever think about are you strictly, like, what are your plans now? Now that the Garden State Modelworks is going better than you expected, probably much better than you expected.
A lot better, yeah.
A lot better than you expected. Way gooder. It's way gooder than you expected.
It's definitely way gooder.
What are your plans? Like, how are you going? Which direction do you like? Say Dave came to you and said, how should I light these buildings? Would you ever be interested in something like that? Or what do you think the future holds for your little company already?
I mean, absolutely. I mean, I would definitely be interested in doing that. I really think the next rock I want to overturn is doing really taking a deep dive into JMRI and Panel Pro, and really starting to get my hand around that kind of stuff, because I could actually generally relate, dispatching a railroad to, automating a building is what I do. I work in the building automation field, and I just started, really unboxing JMRI and installing some block detection on my home layout. And I definitely want to see where I can go with that, with maybe some custom programming as far as that goes. And, having, one light in a room turn on and do stuff like that as, Dave's time clock goes on. It's definitely, the possibilities are endless in that aspect, but definitely keep going with the locomotives. I'm starting to do freight cars now with sound, lighted EOTs.
Oh, really? Lighted EOTs?
Yes. Lighted EOTs that are on the decoder for all patent purposes.
Wow. How are you doing that? So
I actually use some of the Wallace Locomotive Works EOTs. Chris Wallace over there, he makes some very, very exceptional
Wallace
EOTs.
Wallace Locomotive Works. I've never heard of that.
Yes, he makes like 3D printed parts. He's kind of like MacRail. I've also used some of MacRail's parts as well.
Okay.
So essentially what I do is I can drill out part of the EOT. I can sync in a red LED, and I will run that over into the LokeSound 5 FX decoder that I use to automate. I have a flat spot sound that correlates with how fast you're going with the train, flange squeals and stuff that will, periodically come in and out.
So how would you get an end of train device lit on the back of a 15-car consist?
Oh, well, you know what I do with that is Athearn Genesis, they make some pickup trucks with like the roller bearing end caps and stuff. So it's just like, lighting up a caboose, let's say. You have these trucks that, communicate with the track that have power going from the track into, a pair of leads, and you wire it just like a locomotive, except you don't have a motor to deal with now. So on a particular freight car with an end of train device, there would be a decoder inside it on one of these sets of trucks? Correct.
Man, Dave, that would be cool.
Oh, it's fantastic.
Have you got
and his timing is great, because it was, for many years, probably the last 10 or 15 years, the gold standard working into train devices was Ring Engineering.
Yeah.
Small company. I don't remember where they're based.
I want to say New York somewhere, Dave. If not Midwest, somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, it's a small American company, but they made top top of the line, custom trucks. They take a Athearn or an Atlas truck, and they custom built a little circuit board that basically the truck, you could install it on any freight car. You could get it with 33-inch wheels or 36-inch wheels. You could get it with roller bearings or friction bearings or what have you. I mean, mostly roller bearing for the end of train device era. And it came pre-mounted to a coupler. So the coupler, the end of train device, and then a pair of wires that runs to the truck, the pickup truck. And you could replace the last car, one truck on a freight car, and then that car basically became a permanent or semi-permanent end of train car. And that's how we do things on the OC. I've got 7 or 8 of those EOTs. But Ring Engineering, basically post-pandemic with all the product shortages, decided they were just going to back out of that line of business. And the working end of train devices are very hard to find at this point.
Yeah,
if not impossible.
You can't.
So that's a great idea, John. Good call.
Yeah, there's no real decent high end ones on the market. I don't want to bash anybody, but I know Bachmann makes one, but it's very, very, very big, and it's
overscale. Yeah,
it's too overscale. So with the parts at hand, with what I'm able to do, I have done a couple of those cars for a couple of clients of mine. But the big thing too is like the sound. I've been promising Dave for the last 6 months. I feel like that I was going to make a car for the OC there, which is still coming. I promise.
Sound?
Yes, with sound.
Like what kind of sound would be in a car on the, like it just like squealing wheels or what?
So actually, some background with the car here. You'd essentially consist it with your engines, right? So you just add, a third or fourth engine of the car number that's on the side of the car. I have developed a sound file from scratch that actually automates like flat spot sounds. So as you increase the speed of the train, you hear clunk, 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 clunk. Same thing with your air brakes releasing. So as soon as you go above, you turn your throttle above 0, you hear the air brakes kick off. And then same thing when you go back down to 0, you hear the air brakes kick back on. It's actually a very cool file.
That is so freaking cool.
So did I understand you right? This would be a car behind the consist. Is this what you're saying?
Yeah, it's it would be just like having another engine in your consist, right? But it could be 50 cars back as long as you're on the same railroad.
So it's just a car in the consist.
Correct.
And it's going to use the same basic idea where it has a wheel set that picks up the power?
Yep.
And why does it... It doesn't matter what consist it would be in then, would it?
You can put it in any consist. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just an independent car.
Yeah, it's an independent car with a loc sound decoder in it. So you're giving it a select name, which I typically do to the car identification number on the side, the first 4 digits of that. So let's say it's 6604159 or whatever. It would be 6604. Hopefully it doesn't conflict with anything. That is that's just like another engine.
So then somebody, when you pick it up, so okay, Dave, how is this going to work? Or Rich, because you understand the whole process. So how is this going to work when you pick up your consist? Like would you program that into the throttle? Like do you use the phone? I really like using my phone for the throttle on the OC. So how would you pick up that car? Like how would that work?
Well, that car would be programmed into a consist. It would be, say it's again, 660405 and 6604 gets added to the consist as just a middle locomotive, and it could be anywhere in the train. For me, I'm going to put it towards the back of the train because it would be cool to hear. You hear sound up front from the locomotives.
Right.
It'd be really cool to hear this sound later back in the train, especially if the train's going to work the yard. And
so for me as the operator, I wouldn't need to know anything other than the consist number like I do now.
Yeah, I was just going to say you dial up your consist number. It's on the paperwork that you'd get from the train master, at least on the OC, and you select your consist, and automatically those sounds are going to work as part of the locomotive consist.
Wow, that would be cool.
It's a cool idea. Yeah,
it really is because there's so much focus on locomotives, but now we have obviously freight car fleets, the freight car models that are super detailed and of course more expensive, but the sound is traditionally just associated with the locomotive. Now you're spreading that out into the rest of the train. Again, it's helping it add realism.
Yeah.
Because when you sit and watch a 100-car freight train go by, you're going to hear different sounds as it passes you.
Yeah, John, there's
John when he has trouble forming words, he's getting so excited he can barely contain himself.
Uh-oh.
Like you've got, I mean, for the power in a train device with a power truck, it's the basics are already there. You could add the little whirring whee of the generator on the EOT,
I already
right?
have that actually.
And that's two different. There you go. I mean, that's two different products you could actually just commercially produce and sell in bulk.
Yeah.
Because how cool would it be to have the last car on your train with an end of train device sound like an end of train device car, plus have the screeching wheels and the brake release and all that stuff? I mean, that
Flat
adds a
spots.
whole new level.
So
right?
one thing I think you guys would really like too is actually the way I mapped the one I did for actually everybody that I've done them for. As soon as you hit F8 to start up your engines and stuff, it'll arm your end of train device, right? So the light will start blinking, and then you'll hear that little whir going on. So it arms it and everything. It's actually a pretty cool concept. I'll have to show you sometime, Dave.
It wouldn't be that loud though. The generator of that wouldn't be that loud for the.
They're noticeable.
Oh yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah, they're noticeable. I mean, and plus, this is why you wouldn't want to have it up against the locomotives.
Yeah,
because it's so the OC would be a little tricky because we turn consus so often during a session, but that's not a big deal. That's something that we could do just included as part of the setup. Still, that's a cool idea, John. I like it.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it's been a blast developing that, and hopefully I could do some more stuff. The next thing I think, the next, I know Lyle, you're saying before, I don't even know why I didn't think about it. For really the modern crowd here, I mean, I guess it could apply to you too, Dave, and myself, but I really want to I was sitting down in Ridgefield Park with Scott Lupia last week when we were watching trains going by, and an intermodal train came by, just, idling on by, and they had the refrigerated.
That would be cool.
Refrigerator containers, and I think that might be the next thing I want to tackle. It really shouldn't be too hard to do, quite honestly. It's just really the space and stuff that's involved, but I think that might be the next thing too. Yeah, you know what? They're as much as you think there's a lot of room inside intermodal containers, there is. It's really going to be the acoustics to ensure that you get the good sound quality out of it.
Yeah, because there's no vent, there's no exit like there is in locomotives.
It's just a plastic box, and and then you're gonna have to route the wires up through into a container. There's a lot of logistics involved of getting to that point. But I think that might be the next thing when I have some free time.
When will you have some free time?
Well, with the current amount of orders right now, and I actually just moved into an apartment. Hopefully in 3 weeks or so.
So now you said you have a home layout?
Yes, I do. Me and my grandfather built I think I have maybe 15 by 20 double track loop going in his basement there. It's a couple towns away from where I am now.
Oh, that's pretty cool, working with your grandfather.
Yeah, no, he was definitely an instrumental part of me getting into modeling. He's really the one that kind of pushed and really introduced me to it. He isn't necessarily a complete rail buff or anything like that. He's always been very, he loved the construction, the carpentry, not so much the wiring. That's always been kind of my whole thing.
Well, yeah.
But,
I can't imagine your grandfather would understand pretty much anything you've said.
Yeah. But, he's that me and him would go up to Springfield together, and he always loved the scenery and everything like that.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's the beauty of the hobby, isn't it? There's something everybody loves to do.
For sure.
But just before we go on, Dave, you're kind of a music buff.
I am, and so is our friend Rich.
I know that. Well, I was getting to that. And Rich, you're kind of a music buff.
Unlike Dave, I don't play, but I like to listen.
Yeah, Dave plays the bongos or something. I don't know. But wasn't the Screeching Wheels a punk rock group in the early '90s, late '80s?
Might have been.
There you go.
Might have been.
It's a great.
That's a long time ago, so it's hard for me to remember back that far.
Right, but if it wasn't, wouldn't it have been a great name for a punk rock group, the Screeching Wheels? I mean, seriously, what a great name! I think is Dave on mute again?
The Flat Spots.
The Flat Spots.
The Flat Spots. That's a catchy one for sure.
Yeah, I like the Screeching Wheels, man. I got nothing. It's like, is my mic on? Okay, I'm going to ask a question here, and this is going to be the dark side of model railroading, the ugly side of model railroading. What does this all cost? What does it cost, Dave, when you get a locomotive back with a new decoder and all the bells and whistles that you want on it? What is this costing you for one of these locomotives?
If it includes a whole new decoder and a whole sound system that he's doing on top of it, it's a solid $220. on top of the cost of the locomotive. But that hasn't happened much because as the hobby goes along, where John really excels is with the older models that don't come with this, that may come with a decoder, but not the high end decoder. So, for example, a bunch of Intermountain SD40-2s. Like I've got a couple of those that we decided to put the extra lighting on because they commonly lead on the OC, and those were half that price because John was able to reuse the decoder, reuse the speaker, and just add the step lighting. So it really varies depending on the project, but it brought me a lot of comfort after seeing the first batch come back and the level of quality and the level of consistency. I mean, to the point where, I went ahead and decided that 6577, my kit bashed and partially scratched C37A that I'm begging Rapido Trains to do in the future.
Yeah, I know.
Wait, I'm sorry.
Go ahead,
Nope.
Rich.
Nope.
No,
Well, when Rapido Trains
Rich.
does that in the future, hopefully, it basically opens the door to a much more authentic locomotive roster for the Onondaga Cutoff because that entire fleet was based out of Selkirk.
Lionel,
Well,
what brand did Dave just reference?
Rapido Trains.
Your fast track for model railroading fun.
There you go.
Nice. So this engine is, it's 60 hours of kit bash, a couple dozen hours of programming and repairs and all this stuff. And I gave it to John to add working markers to and step lights. And it came back just like any other engine. Now, kit bashes are always a work of art. They're always a little cantankerous to work on. And he did beautiful work on it. So this guy can put these lights in a stock Atlas, B23-7 with all of its cast plastic parts and it's very secure. Or we can take a kit bash job and add the lights to that too. And it left and right, it gets better and better. It's great. This hobby is incredible.
It is incredible.
What we can do.
So the conversation, me personally, I don't think this sounds terribly expensive to me. Like I think, we always have that conversation. There's always one branch or one segment of people in the hobby that, want everything done for $12.
There certainly are a lot of those.
Yeah.
And there's plenty of blue box kits at trade shows for those guys. And that's fine. If that's how you want to do the hobby, the more power to you. I really believe that there's room for that. But for the people that are trying to create an atmosphere that really are willing to invest some money, because think about the amount of time we spend on this stuff and the amount of passion we put into it. A lot of people, are still hemming and hawing at the cost of DCC. Guys, if you'd done DCC 15 years ago, it would have been half the price.
Yeah.
It just depends on how you want to embrace the hobby. I really believe that there's a compelling reason if you're going to do something to do it well. And John is not catering to a market that's interested in, horn hook couplers. This is a guy that is pushing the limits of what's realistic. It's wonderful.
Well, and also it's interesting because of John's age, 22, almost 23. When's your birthday, John?
July 17th.
Can you loan me $7? If you can loan me $7, because I want to buy you something really nice.
I could definitely loan you $7.
Okay. I'm interested to have John in this conversation because he's young and he's new and he's just getting to the adult part of the hobby, where he has some of his own income and things like that. And I'm interested in, where do you feel, John, what have you noticed about being a businessman or somebody that produces a product in the hobby as far as price and market? Do you feel like the market is unending? I mean, it seems to me, I always say on the podcast, this hobby's way bigger than anybody realizes.
Oh, absolutely. You know what? It's funny. There are some people out there that are like, oh, this is just going to fizzle out because, everyone's going to have their needs met eventually. And I do disagree with that completely. This market is 110% never ending, in my opinion. There's, plenty of people like Dave. I have a lot of customers that, every month, 4 or 5 models just, land on my doorstep and they're like, hey, do whatever you want with them. There's a lot of people out there that want this stuff on their older models. Either they have a sentimental attachment to them, or quite honestly, the value's there, or it's a model that will never ever receive the lighting that an Aurora SD60F will from the factory. But really, for me, what I see, like as you just said, coming into adulthood here, having my own income and all this kind of stuff, like it's a really awesome experience to have. Almost have my hobby being self-sufficient at this point.
Sure.
But it's a very interesting, very interesting. That's all I'll leave it at. It's definitely very, very cool.
Yeah, because my personal opinion, I mean, everybody knows I love to go to Leaf games. And I mean, I sit in the first row of the second deck, and for me and my son to go to a Leaf game and have a couple of beers, we're leaving there just short of $300 for 3 hours worth of entertainment.
Yeah.
And, so my argument has always been, spend an extra $300 on a locomotive and a couple $100 more. Well, that's not much more than going to a Leaf game. So,
well, and it lasts for decades.
Exactly. Lasts forever. So I'm fascinated by this blowback of how people complain about the price of model railroading, and I'm interested, like you already have started, and there seems to be an endless supply of customers for you, and really, people hardly even know you outside the Northeast area, I'm assuming. Like, what's the farthest away customer you've had so far?
So I do some stuff for guys out in the West Coast, Redondo Beach, California. Surprisingly, I do a lot of stuff for private pilots that are always up in the air, and then when they land, they want to play with their trains. So a couple guys in California, Washington, probably Washington is the farthest, I should say. A lot of the guys are Illinois, Indiana, Pennsylvania, Jersey, Florida.
So how are these people finding you in such a short period of time?
Facebook, actually. It's all by Facebook.
Like they just happen to be scrolling along looking for pictures of Russian car crash videos, and all of a sudden Garden State Modelworks shows up? Or
So what I do, actually, I'll share my content into a lot of the HO scale LED installation pages or the ESU Loc Sound installation pages. And what I've found is, there's a couple thousand people that are looking at that. And there's people in there either looking for people like me or looking for help for their installations, or they're stuck on something or whatever. And, I'll take one of their engines and fix it for them, or they'll send me their stuff. Like, this is what I want done. I really like your work. But it's really just, I feel like it's advertising in the correct avenues is really what has gotten me the customers that I do now. But people will pay for good work that I have found. They'll pay for it. I mean, it takes time. I feel like I definitely have a very fair price and definitely a great value for what you get. I've had some people that are tire kickers. They're like, man, this is too much. And you know what? I'm just like, good day to you. And if you want to come back, this is where I stand. And that's really how it goes.
How many hours a day do you spend doing this?
So typically I'll work my 8 hours. I'll come home, have some dinner with the girlfriend. And it's usually maybe about 4 hours a day, 5 hours a day after work. And that's typically from Monday through Thursday. And I try to take, and Fridays, sometimes Saturdays and Sundays, I do like to have for myself. But typically Monday through Friday, I work maybe 4 or 5 extra hours after hours.
Holy mackerel. And does your girlfriend just sit in front of the, you be careful there, sport.
I know.
But okay, so like, do you feel like you're starting to get overwhelmed?
And you know what's funny? Scott Lupia always told me when it starts to feel like work, you got to pump the brakes a little bit and, live your life the way you want to, right? Yeah, I definitely feel a little overwhelmed, and I've taken about, a little bit a week and a half here just to relax and, just take it easy. There's definitely a lot of work, and it piles up a lot quicker than it goes out the door. But
yeah, because you don't want the fun to go out of it. I mean, that's an interesting, Dave and Rich, as you guys are considerably older. One of you is almost 50.
Considerably.
Yeah, considerably. You're not young like me. I mean, this is a conversation. I mean, he's just going to get completely overwhelmed at some point. So, I mean, it's an important conversation because you're going to end up losing your enthusiasm for the hobby, where it just becomes this endless grind of. Have you thought of having, getting somebody else to help you, or?
Like we talked about earlier, it's a very acquired taste to do this certain thing. And I don't, as much as I'm sure there's definitely qualified people out there to do it. I don't know if I'd want to trust anybody doing this kind of stuff. It's expensive, a decoder, and you're looking at $100 right there. If you fry a decoder, sure, warranty's great, but there's a lot of expensive stuff here, let alone, the customer models is the utmost priority. God forbid the guy that's working for me, drops an engine or something like that. Especially I have some Overland brass here right now. I don't even even begin to think where or what would happen if something like that happened. So probably not. I think realistically, it's just going to have to slow down to a manageable pace. And you know what? People will wait. I'm into the car hobby a little bit. People will wait, years to get in line to have a custom car built, and it goes the same way for model railroading. And I'm very determined to make sure that the enthusiasm is not lost with this kind of stuff. And with that, I'll definitely have to increase my wait times to, right now I'm right at about 30 to 40 days. If it takes 3 months, it takes 3 months. I mean, it's just the way it is.
Yeah, and really, that 3 months goes by pretty quick for somebody that's just passed off a locomotive and he knows the guy's going to customize it and everything, and it's going to come back. Like, how old of a locomotive could you do? Like, if I sent you an Atlas yellow box Cato Drive Jeep 7, like, would you be able to do something with a locomotive that old?
It's funny you say that. I have 7 or 8 Cato or Atlas yellow box Cato Drive RS3s here right now that I'm doing. So yes, I can do your yellow box GP7, Lionel.
Wow, that's cool. And of course, because you're getting so much publicity, I would get a reduced rate.
Absolutely, I'm sure we can work something.
I tried that. It didn't. It kind of worked. But I wanted to touch on the enthusiasm part of the hobby. And I think, Rich and I are both professional railroaders by day and model railroaders at night and weekends at this point. And you run the same risk. You have to be careful how you manage, how far you go into these things to keep the enthusiasm alive. But the hobby is growing so quickly that there's actually, it's not all electronics or detailing or painting. And all three of those things are almost different hobbies, really. I mean, we all practice them because we have to, but that's not to, forsake operations or, sitting with Scott Lupi at CP5 and watching trains go by. There's different ways to keep the hobby part alive if the mechanical side for a while has to be, super busy putting installations in. So, now that John's back in New Jersey, I mean, he's within an hour's drive of a dozen operating layouts easily. And that's a whole community that, for a guy who's 22, there's a lot of opportunity if you want to start operating that could be woven into your hobby time too, John. So there's lots of ways to keep the candle lit.
Absolutely. I definitely would love to break the ice and come down to the OC. I know I was able to briefly visit there for a couple of minutes there just after you guys finished up filming up that Turboliner video, which is awesome, by the way. Love fun. Love that.
I had a great idea to be in that one, but he got it done before I even got a chance to mention my idea.
But no, Dave, honestly, I would love to come by and operate. And, I think that you'd definitely be a great guy to show me a tutorial of how to operate, in the right way possible there. So,
but there must be like Dave says, there must be all kinds of layouts around. Whereabouts in New Jersey are you?
So I am actually in the most northeast town of New Jersey called Northvale. We are on the border of southern Rockland County, and we border the Hudson River.
So, and where do you do most of your work?
Most of my work's done in my grandparents' basement. That's where all my
no, but your day job.
Oh, my day job. I'm in New York City every day.
And how close is Northvale to New York City?
From door to door, I go and I park at the Port Authority parking garage, and then I take a subway wherever I'm going. It's about 35 to 40 minutes in the morning, and then an hour and a half home. And so,
are you ever in Newark?
Yes, every once in a while. Like I'm actually in Staten Island right now, which is kind of close to Newark. So
you're in Staten Island right now?
Yes.
What are you doing in Staten Island?
I'm actually overseeing some panels we're building for a new job I'm going to be on.
Oh, I mean your day job, not right this minute. You're not in
Staten No, I'm in Northvale right at this minute.
Okay. How do you pronounce Newark?
Newark.
Yeah, exactly. Dave, anything?
You mean Newark?
Newark. Yeah.
Nork.
Nork.
Yeah, Nork.
Nork. Nork.
Yeah, it's just like orange.
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 John, did you grow up in Northvale?
Yes, I did.
How do you pronounce Newark there, Rich?
Newark.
Yeah.
Nork.
Nork. Port Nork.
Today, Rich tried to convince me there was a lake in New Jersey.
Yeah, there's a few.
I don't believe it. I thought everything was kind of like Hackettstown, which is just all pavement and strip malls.
Hackettstown.
Yeah.
I think he meant to say Hackensack.
Hackensack.
so.
Where
Hackensack. There is a river in Hackensack. It's not a good smelling one.
What was that? What was the name of that town in that song you guys did with your singing group, Dave?
Oh no, you don't count singing as music. Remember, you only count bongos.
No, you will count bongos as music.
No, you're the one that said it. But in any case, yes, it was Hackettstown.
Yeah. So I'm not that crazy. I mean,
Billy Joel sang about Hackensack.
Hackensack,
He
right?
sure did.
yeah, exactly.
All these Native American influenced names.
I had another. Oh yeah, rail. So what kind of rail fanning do you do around there?
So we have the. So I actually grew up right along the CSX River Line, Conrail River Line. So realistically, most of my rail fanning has been on actually really the whole river line, if we're being honest here. So a lot of CSX stuff. I ventured out into the southern tier. I've chased plenty of SU 99s back as a kid. I've actually, when I went out to school in Williamsport, I made plenty of trips out to Altoona to see the Horseshoe Curve. But really, besides that, for me, in the last couple of years, my 5-6 years, don't want to say I stopped taking pictures, but I definitely wanted to pay attention to the actual trains themselves rather than taking pictures. So it's really been one thing for me. I go out there for leisure now, if anything.
What is it about rail fanning? What is it about this hobby? I'm interested in a guy. You were born in 2001?
2000.
2000. What is it about this hobby? What is it? I mean, you're a perfect example of an avenue that is rarely explored. What is it about this hobby for a guy that was born in the year 2000? How do you think you got interested in this hobby? Like, what is it about? Let's have a deeper question here, because I'm convinced what I'm starting to realize is I think most people that are in this hobby, that are devoted to this hobby, when they're born, there is a ferry that goes from hospital to hospital and spreading pixie dust on certain individuals. And that's how they get into the hobby, because there seems to be no rhyme or reason who's in the hobby and who's not in the hobby. But once you're in it, you can't get out.
Yeah, you can't. It's just like, a bug bit me, man. I can't get out now.
Yeah.
But, for me, I genuinely think it's just these big, burly, loud machines that, as a small kid, these things are massive. And even as an adult, a locomotive is huge. And, it's quite honestly the badassery of, hauling thousands of tons of freight for hundreds of miles. I mean, it's just such a cool concept, and it is just an incredible thing to be able to witness and to model, especially. I really think that's just the charisma of it almost is just, how much it shouldn't work, but it works so well, if that makes any sense. The physics just aren't in its favor, but it works so well.
For really old guys like Rich, like when they were kids, they got, like the Tyco set or something like that they were able to enjoy, and run around the Christmas tree or whatever. But what was it like? What was your introduction to the hobby? Do you remember your first locomotive or train that you had?
I sure do. So in 2004 or 5, my grandfather, he was living in Oradell at the time. We had a small layout there. Later on, obviously, he got me the Bachmann rendition of Thomas with all the cars and everything. I remember that being in a circle, and then we graduated onto the Bachmann stuff. I remember I had a Bachmann B&O F3 and a Western Maryland GP38, and those are like the very early memories I have of modeling. But it had to definitely be that Bachmann Thomas set as a kid.
Yeah, I guess we're starting to see the wave of those folks coming into the hobby now, is the Thomas train crowd.
Yeah.
Yeah, all my kids certainly went through that. That's definitely a big piece of it these days. the little tourist railroads are overrun by little kids when they have Thomas come.
Oh yeah.
It's amazing.
My son's 29, and he started with Thomas stuff.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
And your son, Rich, I mean, he seems to be as interested in rail fanning as you are, isn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. And because he's in a different area, especially, he lives in the Pittsburgh area. I'm in northern New Jersey. He's learning and exploring new places out there. And we recently had a friend visiting from Australia, and we went out to Crescent, and then I took him out to Pittsburgh, and my son showed us around. It was kind of neat.
Yeah,
I wasn't the expert. My son was.
So
That's awesome.
it is. So sorry, John, but I'm asking Rich a question now. So your son, is he like you? Is he interested in model railroading at all? Whereas you're interested. I mean, you've stated many times you're not a model railroader because you don't build. You think you're not a model railroader because you don't build models or structures or have a layout. But you love to you've operated on just about every layout on the planet, certainly in the Northeast. And where does your son fit in?
Pretty similar. He's done because of me, let's say, as growing up, he had exposure to a lot of operating layouts. He does have a little bit of N scale stuff, but right now he's not building anything. So his interest is rail fanning and operating, and what we're working on. And I was coordinating a little bit with Brad Williamson on this to get Andrew signed up for the Iron City N scale, and hopefully, he can meet some folks that have layouts in the Pittsburgh area. Because he's certainly got the qualifications to be a good operator.
And you met Brad Williamson through the AML Nation.
That's correct.
Yeah. So, John, we got to get you operating. We got to get you on some operating layouts.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
So how are we going to work this, boys? I mean, what's the best way for him to get hooked up with some operating layouts, other than the OC, which is obvious? Dave?
I think, well, Rich was my link, literally my link to the other operating layouts here in New Jersey, thanks to working at NJ Transit with Rich. So I think he's got, John's got a couple good contacts and Rich and I to start that process here. And it to me, it really does open up the hobby. It changes the way you look at model trains when they're serving a purpose on somebody's railroads, somebody's vision. And you go to these sessions and it's almost I don't know. It's almost a responsibility when you go to help the owner bring their dream to life.
Well, I think that you've made that point before. I'm sorry I cut you off there. That was very rude. But I wanted to emphasize you've made that point before, which I think is an excellent point. When you go to an operating layout, it's your responsibility to help the owner enjoy the experience as much as it is the owner wanting you to enjoy the experience. Man, I think that's a great point.
Yeah, I really feel strongly about that. It's a privilege to be included on an invite list, and you go and you jump in with both feet, and it's a reenactment of a certain operation at a certain time period on a certain railroad. And in North Jersey, you can go from the 1920s, right to here, 1994 here. I'm not aware of any operating layouts that are more modern than mine, besides a couple where it's the operation isn't as formal. Where we're not actually, trying to reenact a certain day or a certain era. But one way or the other, I learned so much through Rich and these operating sessions. So it's going to be a fun fall. There's a lot of good stuff to look forward to.
Yeah, it would have been a great May too if you had an operating session then.
Yeah, if I didn't have the rest of life didn't happen, I would have lots of
okay, but exactly. But you were always saying to me to come on. You gotta put your wife and kids first, and then I got to be slotted in there pretty close behind.
Well, if you don't say so yourself, I appreciate your candor, sir.
I'm driving all the way home from Florida thinking to myself, I don't care when the next operating session is, I'm going to it. And it had to be a Wednesday or Thursday, and I'm thinking, okay, there'll be a quick turnaround if it's this weekend, but I'm going. And
yeah, I feel the same way lately about the Tony Custer operating sessions, which I'm thankful to be on his list after a long period waiting to be on that list. And it's the fourth weekend of every month, which just ends up being either a holiday or a trip or we're down the shore. Like I've missed more sessions that I've made in the last couple months, and it's driving me crazy. That layout is awesome.
I got to go to one of those. You and I have got to go to a customer operating session together.
Yeah, he's open to visitors. I just drop him an email, and it's a great iconic experience. It really is. Because did you ever I'm
not a visitor. I'm one of Tony's friends. Come on.
Well, yeah, but he's pretty clear cut about that list. when I wasn't on that list, I didn't know what was going on. He's very particular about it. But I think
I would have no problem getting an invite.
Did you ever go down to? I think we've talked about this, and you had seen the Allegheny Midland in its original form, right?
Yeah, I saw it a couple of times. Awesome. I saw it a couple of times. Rich, you got to move that microphone out just a little bit more, buddy. You and Chris Adams and Kevin Marks. I don't know what happened. You're from the giant nostril crowd. But I'm from the annoying short guy crowd, so it all works out.
I didn't know that. I had never heard of that crowd before.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think you heard it earlier there.
Touché, good sir.
I have a great question. I think this is a great way to end this particular podcast. John, we'll have you on again, of course, to follow your progress. Number one, to follow your progress in getting involved in operating layouts. You must have been working on some locomotives from the area of people that have operating layouts, don't they? Haven't you?
I mean, I want to say Dave is really the number one. I do have another fellow in Virginia. I do some stuff for him, but his layout isn't 110% up and operational.
Right.
As far as like legitimate operations like Dave and a lot of other guys do, it's really just Dave.
Really, eh?
Yeah, it's a lot of private modelers that I'm assuming, they just run around on their own personal layouts, or they put them up in their display cabinets or whatever. I don't know exactly as far as that goes, but really it's just Dave.
But I think that's part of the cool part of the hobby now. You can have, as I say time and time again, you can have a small shelf layout, and one of the locomotives done by you would just bring the thing to life 10 times over.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, so I got this. I'm having this thought while we're having this discussion, and I think it's a great way to end. I'm interested in everybody's opinion because we have a wide variance of ages. We got Rich, who's really, really old, and Dave in his 40s, and John, and me. Is this not what's happening to the hobby? Is this not how it's growing? Is that guys like John and other people are starting? There's a lot more industrious people who are filling gaps that never existed before or always existed. But now there's people like John who can say, I can do this. And there's another guy that can do 3D printing. And there's another guy that can do weathering. And there's another guy that can build structures. Like, are we not seeing that the hobby's growing through the fact that there's more industry being created? Does that make any sense? Did that make any sense?
Absolutely.
I think I agree. Yeah. I mean, it has never been easier to find experts. And also for us all to see expert work. I mean, it wasn't long ago that the only way you could see other people's model railroading work was through the magazines or attending an operating session someplace, whether it was on an organized weekend, which was few and far between, even 20 years ago. There was only a handful of guys that were doing the traveling operations thing 20 years ago. Today, if you wanted to, I'm quite confident you could travel to an operating weekend someplace in North America. There's probably 2 every weekend of the year. Yeah, maybe minus, if you count North America, though, I mean, maybe minus Christmas weekend. I mean, maybe there's only 1 or 2, more distantly. But suffice it to say that you could be operating almost every weekend of the year without really having to work very hard to do it. A lot of these are open houses. A lot of them are invitationals where they're always looking for new blood. So today, you got on, like John said, you jump on Facebook or Instagram or somebody's blog or a website, or you just go to Tangent's webpage and they've got a bunch of user weathered stuff that shows up on their webpage that they post on their page. and then they post who it was. And so you can jump on Facebook or Instagram or, look at one of the listservs, the groups.io listservs online and find out who John Benson is or Lenny Harlos or Matt Sharp. These guys where weathering is an art form. I mean, it's, or where lighting is an art form like it is with John, or where operations is an art form like it is with a Jerry Diedzik or a Tony Custer or a Rich Wisniewski. Like people that not just understand it, but that are eager to share what they've learned from all these decades learning. And the sky's the limit. I mean, when you have this kind of access to experts, Lionel, it's like you and I talking over the years about publishing or about photography and how do you shoot a cover shot. It's right there in your face every month. And I never figured it out till you told me.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
3/4 away from the staples. Boom. Now that I know that, I don't submit any piece to any publication without one of those shots.
Right. Exactly.
And you may or may not get the cover. Most of the time you don't, obviously, but you put it out there. And I think that tells the people at the magazine that you know what you're doing. That's only because I knew you. And now this is something anybody can listen to, and away we go. That's the power of model railroading today. We're not entering a golden era. We're not might be, or we may, no, guys, this is it. It doesn't get better than this. It just gets different.
Yeah.
It's that good. It's that good right now.
It's that good, but it's getting better because you take a guy like John who, at the age of 22 has already got a business. And I'm thinking to myself, maybe this is what we're missing. This is how the hobby is exploding because, John talked about a Wallace Model Works and he has his friend. What's your friend's weathering business?
It's Matt Sharp at Upstate Custom Models.
Upstate Custom Models. Does he have a website?
Yes, he actually just released it yesterday. So,
what did you call it? Upstate?
Upstate Custom Models. He's on Facebook.
He has a website. Why don't you have a website?
Well, I'm following up pretty close behind, Lionel. Don't you worry.
All right.
Don't you worry. Well, he got somebody professionally to do it for himself, so maybe I have to go down that route too.
Well, that's again, like look at everything is changed, and I think that maybe what we've stumbled on tonight, talking to John, is that what's to come to realize is there's so many people, so many of these. Like how old is your friend? What'd you say his name was?
Matt Sharp. He's I think he's my age or a year younger than me.
All right. Now we got to maybe have to talk to Matt too. Now, how did you guys meet? The two of you meet?
So we actually met. We have a couple mutual friends in the Selkirk, Albany area, and we met necessarily through Facebook, and then we figured out later, we have all the same friends. I mean, it was kind of strange that we never really met each other, but truly my work complements his work. He does all the weathering, I do all the electronics and the lighting, and together we have this, outstanding product that we can bring to the table. Because I am nowhere near, I can't weather anything without, a third grade,
sure.
finger painting could look better than anything I can do.
But that's the beauty of the hobby. Again, as we keep saying over and over, you love to do the weathering. Did you say Matt?
Yes, Matt.
Matt. What's your name, Dave? The problem with this podcast, Rich, is it's just going to get worse and worse as the years go by because as I get older and older, like I only now have a vocabulary of 29 words, so it's just going to get worse and worse. It's going to be a whole lot of me saying, what was I saying?
You're going to be angry about missing operating sessions.
Yes.
Angry about bongos and speaking in 29 words. Those are the three things you're going to be obsessed about. It's going to be perfect.
I'm quite curious to hear what those 29 words will become in the next
exactly
20 years here.
No, look, it's this hobby. And there's, I think we've talked about it before in about 100 different ways, but you can take it however far you want to go. But one of the most powerful parts of this hobby is that the experts are tangible, whereas in music, good luck talking to the lead singer of a modern rock and roll band that's gone platinum. But if you want to talk to Tony Custer, who's got, 70 covers and 50 books or whatever the numbers are, you just jump on, protolayouts.io, or you write a letter to Model Railroader or an email. And Tony will respond to you within a day or two. Like, the greatest model railroaders. Here we are talking to Lionel Strang, who had a column on model railroader for a decade, and a well-known model railroad. Like, experts are here, and they're tangible. You can talk to them. You can speak with them. You can go to a meet, and you can meet them. You go to Springfield, and you can come talk to Lionel himself. You know, this hobby is just primed for the era we're in. It's just fantastic. So you can let experts be experts, but you can actually sit and talk with those experts. It's not like a distant relationship. It's all right in front of us if we're willing to sit and make the effort.
Absolutely.
The problem with Springfield is, I found this year, is people would start to come up to the table to ask me a question, and just as they would get almost to the table, they'd go, "Hey, there's Uncle Dave." And they'd be gone.
Well, the only reason Uncle Dave was there is because Uncle Lionel did a wonderful job helping me realize that I needed to get my act together and show up. And so going forward, I'm excited to be part of that again. That was a wonderful experience. Really had a wonderful chance to meet and greet so many fascinating model railroaders and their families. You know, just, again, people whose work I've looked up to for years, and here they are. And then David Hyde from Texas comes up and says hello with one of his right-hand guys. And, you know, Rodney Kantorski from Buffalo stops by and he says hello. And then a couple of the guys I know from some of the West Coast operators that have come to New Jersey once or twice, they walked by. "Oh, what are you doing here?" It's like, "Oh, I'm, talking about the OC. Well, I had so much fun operating on your railroad last year." And like, it's just an unbelievable kaleidoscope of the personalities that are model railroading. And then you go talk to Atherton, or you talk to Rapido. The whole Rapido team was there. It was great. And so I can't wait to do that again. So I am very grateful for that opportunity, Lionel. Thank you.
Yeah, you went over to talk to the folks at Rapido Trains. Nothing. Nobody.
I was on mute. Sorry. Fast track for model railroading fun.
Rapido Trains, your fast track to model railroading fun.
Boy, can you ever, John? And you come back in about 10 years, and I think we'll have all the bugs ironed out of this puppy.
Well, Bruce isn't here, so somebody has to be on mute.
There you go.
Time.
Exactly.
That's true. And, he did nail that first one. He knocked that right out of the park. That should count for the rest of the night.
Yeah. So, Rich, I'm interested in your opinion, too, on this. Like, do you feel like, does that sound like something that I said, where that one of the ways the hobby is expanding and growing is there's so many, there seems to be so many folks like John that are able to start businesses and enjoy the hobby that way?
Well, I think in this particular case, we're talking about newer technology, right? And I think a younger generation is going to be very adept at working with that newer technology, more so than someone who's been a model railroader for 40 years and now has to learn something new.
Yeah, but
so as things are developing and growing in the hobby, it creates new opportunities.
Yeah, it's a great way for the thing to expand. So, this is a really tough question, John. And this is our last question, John. First, I want to apologize. This has been a really crummy interview because it should have been more about you, but I got excited talking about model railroading in general. So it's still an episode. We're going to call it, whatever episode number it is, and it's John McGuire. But I didn't do a very good job of interviewing you.
Hey, it's not a problem. I had a blast being here.
Yeah, we'll have you on again.
That'd be awesome.
We will follow your progress with great interest.
Hey, well, I appreciate that.
So here's a question. See if you can answer this question, or see if you can comment on this statement. One of the things I've harped upon. Geez, the podcast is almost 9 years old, so I guess it's been since you were 13 that I've been harping on this.
Oh, wow.
That's bizarre. That's
yes,
bizarre.
It certainly is.
Like, one of the things I always say is, man, if I'd been, your age, if I'd been 10 years old and had access to the internet like you would have at the age of 10, like, do you feel like your involvement in the hobby is you can't tell if it's far greater, but do you think that, like, how much when do you remember starting to explore the internet because you wanted to see more about model railroading?
Probably in that 8 to 10-year-old window. I remember, in 2006, 7, 8 is when Quantum QSI came out. I remember looking at a lot of the Atlas videos with that. Probably in that time frame. I really think you hit the nail on the head there. Plenty of awesome layouts. And you know what? Even pre-internet, the Dream Plan Build video series, I have all of those. And I remember watching those as a kid.
Now, who are they by?
Model Railroader.
Oh, that's right, too. So you must have just an incredible wealth of acquaintances in the hobby.
Yes, certainly.
Because I think Dave would agree with this, and certainly Rich. I mean, by the time I was 22, I knew like 3 other guys.
Yeah.
And I did not have, I had friends in the hobby, but I did not have an incredible wealth of friends in the hobby. I had, however many it was. It wasn't very many, I can tell you that. I mean, Dave, do you remember that when you were in your early 20s?
Oh my gosh. I mean, I knew a couple of guys from the NMRA group up in Syracuse when I was at college, but until those guys, and I never saw any of their layouts. I never saw any pictures of it. I never went over to their houses. It was just Mark and Jack, the guys I grew up with that I met in 5th grade. Jack is still the right-hand guy that we talked about here on the AML, and he's indispensable at every operating session. We talked about him tonight. And it wasn't until working at an actual railroad, NJ Transit got me to meet Al Tillotson and Rich Wisniewski, both of whose names I recognized from photography from when I was a kid. And the rest is sort of history. But no, when I was 22, just going to NJ Transit, like I had one or two close train friends, and that was that.
Yeah, I mean, what a difference. What about you, Rich? I mean, you must have been in the same boat. Is Rich on mute again?
Not so much into the modeling back then, but I have become quite the rail fan. I joined a local NRHS chapter. I met friends in 1981 that are still very good friends today. But what I've learned since then, especially through Facebook, is I see a picture of a train that I could have taken.
Did he leave?
I don't know.
Yeah, he's left.
Maybe he took that train. I think he must have just decided to get on the train.
This happens to me more than once, where we get right to the end of the podcast and then somebody's internet crashes or something.
Oh, there he is. There he is. I think I see his icon dancing around.
Where'd you go, Rich? Oh, he's not here.
He's on the train. I'm telling you.
All right, whatever. Anyways, we gotta call it a day. Anyway, so it works out perfect. John, I apologize. This was a great. How
about now?
Now we can hear you.
Hey. He just got out of the tunnel, guys.
No, I figured out what it was. I was sitting on the
mute button?
headset mute button. Yep. So,
nice.
Let me just throw this out there because I think it was an interesting point. When I started in the hobby in the early 80s, I joined a local NRHS chapter. I made friends there, many of whom I'm still friends with today, 40 plus years later. But now through Facebook or Rare Picture Archives or Flickr, I'm seeing all these photos that were taken by other people that I didn't know the same days, the same weeks, the same months that I was out there taking similar photos. And that's the difference. Today, people taking current photos are sharing them on social media, and those folks are connecting instantly. Yeah. Whereas now I'm making friends with people that I could have been friends with 40 years ago. We just never crossed each other's paths. But because we have the same photos and the same experiences, we're now reliving them together through social media. It's kind of neat.
That is very neat. That's a very neat aspect to look at it that way.
It's very hard to ask John the right questions because I want to say to him, man, you have no idea what's headed your way. Because the three of us, Dave, Rich, and me, we've had the experience of not having access to the internet and the old ways of model railroading. And John, who's never had that, understood the old ways of model railroading. He's right on the, he's riding the wave already. We're still paddling and he's riding the wave. And I mean, it's, we'll have to talk again. It'll be interesting to see how this develops for you.
Well, I'll be more than happy to share it with you and, get to live it with you guys. So I appreciate it.
So that's Garden State Modelworks, LLC. That's on Facebook. It's really easy to find on Facebook.
Correct.
Just type in the search box, Garden State Modelworks. And operators are standing by. John will be taking your call.
I'm going to have an army after this, huh?
Yeah, and he'll push Dave's stuff aside and start working on your stuff, whoever you are.
Yeah, sorry, Dave. I told you next week.
Yeah, that's how it goes. It's all right.
So where are you guys still meeting at the Wawa?
No, so since I'm back home here, we're not pulling off exit 277 anymore. I can actually just go drive right up to Dave's house and drop off big boxes of models now.
So how far are you from Lebanon, or New Jersey?
So you're about, I want to say it's almost exactly an hour. I'll typically stop by Dave's house. I'm a member of the Lehigh and Keystone Valley out in Bethlehem, and it's right down the road. So he's about 60 miles, I'd say, Dave.
That's about right. Yep.
Yeah.
And it's almost all interstate from where you are. So on a Saturday, it's not too bad.
No.
Dave, you got to hook him up with Jimmy Winters. He's in the same neighborhood.
Oh, I thought Jimmy. Okay, excellent. I didn't realize Jimmy was from that direction. Cool.
Yeah.
Is Winters from Closter by chance, Rich?
Yes, his red pickup truck, license plate WPNB 51.
Okay.
You've probably seen it.
I'm sure
Rich,
I have.
I love Rich. That's great. I love that you know people's license plates.
Well, I mean, because that's I realize the listeners won't get it, but that's a vanity plate with the Conrail era train symbol for the local freight that worked the northern branch all the way up to Northvale.
And B51.
Right.
Yep.
WPNB, Way Freight, Philadelphia Division, North Bergen, 51.
Wow. That's cool. What did you say? You started to say you referred to some sort of something that's near Dave's place?
Oh yeah, the Lehigh and Keystone Valley Railroad Museum. It is actually it's an incredible layout, Lionel. If you ever get the chance, I'd gladly love to bring you around. And same thing with the guys there. It's a HO scale representation of I want to say most of Pennsylvania. Dave, I'm sure you can help me a little bit more here. I'm pretty new over there.
Yeah, they do. It's basically the Allentown area and to the north. So it's more or less the Lehigh line from Phillipsburg through Allentown and then up towards the northern part of the Lehigh line. But they got the Reading line. They do a really nice job with the Lehigh Valley region.
And where is it?
Bethlehem, Pennsylvania.
Really? I think I know of that. I think our buddy Hard Party goes there. That's an incredible layout, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Like it's a club layout.
Right.
Yes.
And why do you belong to that one, which is so far from your house?
So really, a lot of my friends from this area and from out that way, they all go there. Actually, realistically, I haven't been a part of a railroad club until 2 years ago. There was a railroad club around here in Hohokus called the Ramapo Valley. They closed down in 2011 or 12, I want to say. But I was a part of a club out in the Williamsport area. It's called the Clinton Central Model Railroad Club. Those guys are awesome out there. And I knew as soon as I came home, like I need to find that. I need to have a club that gives me that similar feel with all the friendly attitudes and all that. And the LKV is where it was. So,
what's it? Say the name a little slower for me.
The Lehigh and Keystone Valley Railroad Museum.
Lehigh and Keystone Valley Railroad Museum.
Yeah,
Correct.
LKV, they call it. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. People talking really fast acronyms. Like, is this where I'm picking it up?
It's a Jersey thing. You wouldn't understand.
Yeah.
Trust me, we're from Jersey.
Yeah, not far from Newark.
That's right.
Newark.
Just trust us.
Yeah.
Is there the best?
Is there a Lebanon? Is there a Lebanon in every state in the union?
There seems to be, but they call it differently. In Pennsylvania, it's called Lebanon.
Yeah, Lebanon.
Lebanon.
Yeah.
There's actually 2 Lebanons in New Jersey.
I'm more of a fan of Hackettstown. That's one of your that's my favorite song from your group there, Dave, is Hackettstown.
That was a fun song. Yeah, that was one of those ones that was sort of written as almost, just a lighthearted tune and ended up being one of our most requested songs.
Yeah. So here's what I'm going to leave you with, John. If you ever see Dave with his what do you play? Not the
I don't play the
congos. The congos.
I don't play music.
You do. You got the congos.
Yeah.
The
And
bongos.
I'm not gonna tell you when the gigs are, Lionel.
No, I'm not. I got my own thing going on. I got my own thing going.
Damn
here.
right you do.
John, if you ever see Dave with his congos and Ralph Heiss with his bass guitar playing in the subway, and they try to tell you it's a band, don't buy it. It's a subway stop. Two guys, one guy with a bass guitar, and one guy with congos is not a band. It's a subway stop.
What we need is one guy on the upside down construction 5-gallon drum.
Yes.
Yeah, there you go.
And then we'll be set.
Yeah. Then you got a band. All right. That's it. We got to go now. We got to stop. We're having too much fun. And in a couple of days, what day is today? I forget. But in a few days, me and Rich are going to interview Ken McQuarrie.
That's exciting.
It is. That'll be
great.
fun.
Looking forward to it.
Me too. We're going to work on your. Actually, do you have a pair? Have you ever gone swimming, Rich, with those like little clip-on nose things?
No.
Yeah, we're going to have to get you a pair because so you only breathe out through your mouth or something. It's funny. I got these headsets, and some people, it works perfect. For some people, you can pick up their breathing. It's very strange. It's very strange and peculiar. It's a big nostril thing. It's just like I have a giant head. I got this giant melon that's like it's grotesque. And some people have normal. Some people can go into a regular hat store in the mall and buy an adjustable hat, and it will fit. I can't. I have this giant melon. So everybody's got some sort of quirk.
That is true. There's a lot of quirkiness in the world.
There's a lot of quirkiness in the world. All right, we're done. All right, Dave, I'll do the email address because I think that would be probably the best way to go here. So our email address is The Modeler's Life. And that's one L like Lebanon, not two L's like Lionel. That's the best I could come up with on short notice.
That's good.
Yeah, it wasn't
How
bad.
about one L like ditch light, not two L's like auxiliary light?
There you go.
Man.
Ooh,
That's pretty good right there.
Oh,
That's great.
that's sweet. Nice one, Rich. That's
Thank
why, and you wanted to know why you were coming on the podcast. Boom. Right there.
Hands down, walking away.
Walking away. Yeah, exactly. And if you didn't catch that, you can go to our website, amodelerslife.com, and click on the picture of the moderately agitated male boy in a particularly agitated state. And John, I got a question for you.
What's that, Lionel?
Have you ever wanted a T-shirt with a hot dog on it?
I absolutely would love a T-shirt with a hot dog on it.
Well, if you go to Midwest Model Railroad, and their URL is midwestmodelrr.com, and scroll across the menu bar to Other, and click on that, you'll see the AML shop. And if you go into the AML shop, boom, you are in a wonderland of hats, hoodies, mugs, T-shirts, whatever you could possibly need. And there's a T-shirt in there with a hot dog on it.
Oh, that's great. I need one.
Yeah, everybody needs AML merchandise. And for those of you who really enjoy this podcast and would like to have twice as much podcasting every week, you'd like to listen to the podcast on Monday, and you'd like to listen to it on Tuesday, if you click on our Patreon link, boom, you go there, and just for a few cents a day, you can have twice as much podcasting. Our Tuesday podcast is a paid for. It's a subscription service, and we like to think that is more of our homey channel. It's a little more relaxed, let your hair down a bit more. It's just all sorts of interesting stuff. A lot of episodes of Uncle Dave, which, by the way, Uncle Dave, I still have to send them to your brother. I should try to do that before the next time I see him.
Yeah, that would be good. I think he'd appreciate it.
I know he would appreciate it. I'm one of these guys that has a long list of stuff to do. As you're starting to find out, having your own Patreon channel.
It's a fact. Yes.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful way to catalog progress, whether it be a podcast or the Onondaga Cutoff, which is my Patreon channel. It's you build a library of wonderful stuff, but it certainly adds to the to-do list. So you've been a great inspiration with that and a big help with it. Again, I'm very grateful for the back and forth that we have on these topics.
Yes, there's a link also on the AML website, amodelerslife.com. Not very far from the top of the page is a link to Dave's Patreon channel. Just a picture of me and Dave, and you just click on the button, and boom, you go to Dave's Patreon channel. And
so if you want a backstory on the Onondaga Cutoff, if you want to see how we create some of the magic that you see on Facebook Live, if you want to see a little bit about how we put things together and how I model some of the scenes and the equipment that's on the OC, that's the spot. And the subscription service makes you part of the OC family, and you're able to see a little bit more than you'd be able to get to on the Facebook Live or in an operating session. So it's a lot of fun to share with people.
And it really is. It's quality videos. It's a good thing to belong to, because you get to see a lot, like you say, the backstory of the OC, and you're seeing a layout that's becoming famous. You get to see the behind the scenes of a layout that's well known. You guys just had an article in The Ultimate Guide to Model Railroading that was published by Kalmbach.
Yeah, excitingly, it was a piece that I put together a while back. Rich Wisniewski, who's here with us tonight, is prominently featured in some of the photographs, and properly so, because he's such an important part of what we do here on the OC. But it's a piece on modeling railroad radio and how to use radio in your operating sessions. So very exciting. And it ironically ended up running concurrently with a piece in Model Railroader itself, just called Setup Night. How you extend the fun for Setup Night. And the whole idea for that piece came from Rich. So it's Rich Wisniewski month in the Model Railroad.
Wow.
Model Railroad world.
Go ahead.
Or Rich Wizensky, I think is how they spelled it.
Oh my God. Yeah. I don't know what's going on with that. Like that's something I really am careful about, but they must retype these articles. I don't know. But in any case, the pieces came out pretty well. Some typos notwithstanding, but a lot of fun to be able to share at this level. It's a real privilege.
Yeah, very much fun. Very fun. I was going to say something. Couldn't have been that important. I think we got her all covered. I think that's it. I think we covered it all.
Roger.
Awesome. Rich, you got to stop breathing, buddy. We'll work on it. We will iron the bugs out of that puppy. That's it. We're done. I think we've covered it all. So now, John, the important part, and I apologize again. This was a great episode of A Modeler's Life podcast. It was a really good episode. A lot of interesting topics covered. But we didn't talk to you as much as we should have.
Hey, you know what, Lionel? I had a blast, and really, Dave, before he's like, "Oh, you have nothing to be worried about," whatever. I was a little bit nervous coming in here. I've never done something like this before, and man, what a blast this was! I had an incredible time.
I was nervous. I'm always nervous. Okay, that's it. Now, at the appropriate moment, John, we need you to say "Happy Rails" to you. Now, the key here is there's no singing. There's no dancing. There's no interpretation. We just need you to say "Happy Rails" to you, and say it with enthusiasm.
With enthusiasm, I definitely can do that.
Okay. Well, John, as we close the barn doors on another episode of A Modeler's Life, and the sun slowly sets over the back 40, I guess there's nothing else left to do except for you to say,
"Happy Rails" to you.
While in Busted Knuckle, guests of A Modeler's Life podcast stay at the Casa del Sol Motor Court and Inn, where late-night dancing at the Rumba Room is a magical event to be experienced.
It's another Lincoln Homer.
I thought you said you were going to say it with enthusiasm.
Oh, come on. That was enthusiasm. That was the definition of enthusiasm.
That's good.
John, this is going to work out just fine.
Great.
Your plan. This fits like a glove.